Michael Jackson's molestation trial continues today after the 15-year-old accuser finished his testimony on Tuesday, telling the jury he no longer respects the pop star nor likes him. Mike Taibbi is covering the trial for NBC News, and Savannah Guthrie for Court TV. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Ann.
We've heard, Mike, first of all, starting with you, that there's a lack of corroborating testimony and evidence in this case, and that much of this case rests on the credibility of this now 15-year-old boy. How credible has he been on the stand? You were in the courtroom for part of the time.
I was there for all of his testimony and all the redirect, and I have to tell you, Ann, that even though this boy is off the witness stand right now, he's not off the hot seat in the sense that his credibility is still going to be part of the discussion from here on. I'll give you a couple of examples of how the jury was invited to examine the inconsistent statements this boy made, the testimony that he gave that contradicted earlier statements he had made, and the ways he has unquestionably changed his story. Two things. Number one, on his direct examination, he was asked, he talked about a statement he attributed to Michael Jackson in discussing a sexual act of male gratification. He said Michael told him that if men don't do it, they could reach the stage where they might go out and rape a girl. Well, he had to admit, and it was later confirmed, that the first time he said that statement, he attributed it to his grandmother in his first interview by police. In fact, the deputy sheriff to whom he told that story eventually testified before the grand jury that, yes, that's the person, the grandmother, to whom the boy attributed that statement. A key distinction. Also, in his earlier testimony, he had talked about, the accuser had, about 5 acts of molestation. Some of them occurring before the so-called rebuttal video, some of them occurring after. He affirmed that twice. On the stand, he only talked about 2 incidents and said all the molestation, alleged molestation, occurred after the so-called rebuttal video. A key point, particularly because in the rebuttal video and his statements, he extolled the virtues of Michael Jackson and said on the stand that when he said those things, he was telling the truth. So the jurors being invited to look at all these things, and they are taking notes.
So it's very interesting to think about how the jury is reacting to these apparent inconsistencies. Savannah, let me ask you that. Were you watching the faces of the jury? Do you have any idea how they were taking all this in?
Well, of course, it's like reading tea leaves, Ann, but I think we have a very attentive jury, and as Mike says, they take notes furiously, so I think that they are going to focus on some of these inconsistencies. But we have to take a step back, because we as reporters, we love to see inconsistencies. We just seize on them anytime we can. Jurors won't be deliberating this case for several months, and what they're going to take away is their gut feeling about this boy. Do they like him? Is he believable? Is he credible? And because of that, I think one of the biggest problems on cross-examination was how his demeanor changed. He was likable on direct, but he changed into kind of a sullen, sassy, evasive person on cross-examination, and that may be what the jurors take away ultimately.
Let's talk about this a bit more, Mike, because I think that what Savannah is saying is really true. Was this also your impression? Because I understand also you noted that there was a lack of emotion in his testimony.
Yeah, I think that's true, and there were a couple of things that just struck me. If I were a juror and a parent, as 10 of them are, of a child, I'd wonder why, after his discussion about the first act of alleged molestation, he said, the next night I was lying on Michael's bed watching television when it happened again. It's like a thud there. There's something missing there. But I think Savannah's correct, too, that as we go down the line, this trial's far from over yet, as we go down the line, it's basically going to be a question about whether or not they believe the basic story that this boy has told, which has been corroborated by his siblings. And don't forget, there's a problem for the Michael Jackson side, too, and that Jackson is going to have to be revealed as somebody who drinks, if not someone who has a drinking problem. And people on the jury who have experience with alcoholism may wonder, see, somebody who has a drinking problem and who may have these tendencies, because that's going to be the suggestion of the prosecution, could he have done something in those instances which sounds reasonable, like not a stretch? And there's so much that's going to be discussed about that we're a long way away from the point where some pundits were saying yesterday after the kid got off the stand, Tom Mesereau, Jackson's defense attorney, should have just said the defense rests. Nowhere near that right now, Ann.
All right. Mike Taibbi and Savannah Guthrie, pleasure to speak to both of you on this topic. Thanks so much for your perspective this morning.